Hello there, we are back to look at the expanded rosters, and this time we're going to look at the Amazons, created by Decomposed, Ubermorgan, Croissoid and Inquisitor 14, along with the Ost Factions mod, which was created by Shaky Rivers, and in conjunction with the Mixu Unlocker, so you actually pay the campaigns. All this means you now can play a proper campaign of the mighty Amazonian women, and there'll be more on the campaign in the next video. Before we get started with the Amazons, they do have access to some Yzerman units, and you can actually use the Amazons with the Yzerman if you would want to, as well as the AI. If you do want this option, there is a sub mod to allow only Amazons to recruit these units. As in Yore, the Amazons and the Yzerman have a strange and sometimes hostile relationship. So download the Amazons for Amazon sub mod, and all these links will be in the description of this video. I'll bring up any units the Amazons have, which they share with the Yzerman as we get to those particular sections. So let's go to the jungles of Austria and look at the mighty ladies and see what the modders have come up with. You legendary Yord for this faction and who you start with when you play the campaign. Panthesia is a legend amongst the people and considered one of the greatest of the Amazon warriors. When first contact happened with Norska from the settlement of Skeggy, they took some of the Amazons and planned to keep them as slaves. Outraged, Panthesia got a war band together and took it on herself to liberate her sisters, swaying Seguois the Imperia in her escape on a 1v1 battle against a giant of a man. So back to Panthesia. As you can see, she's a strong melee combatant, while not spectacular as the armour is a bit low, but she is quick and got good AP at 290. Also, she can be mounted on a horned one or a pterodactyl. As a Yord, she is best used for some type of protection, as the armour is always an issue, especially in 1v1 fights, even though she has a reasonable melee defense. Abilities, she has enchanted skin, which appears on a lot of the characters and some units. This constant ability helps her survivability against other Yords, but only 10% damage resistance, but it does have a good 20% magic resistance, which reminds me of the dwarves. Next we have Memorizing Dance, another constant dropping damage and leadership, especially nice as it's in an area. Elixir of Life gives her a nice regen bonus, useful to get out of the combat, get another unit to cover a retreat, and pop this to boost health, and a nice big vigour increase as well, vital in those long fights. Amulet of the Moon is an item given here, more resistance to various damage, more than making up for lack of armour, especially when all these abilities are stacked. Yasui, her own weapon, Throat Cutter, had a nice bit of AP. If you equip her with all the above, means she's a very potent combatant indeed. Now on to the mysterious Yaxwana. Her origins are unknown, but she's deep in the swamps of the Butte Stump in a cave. Known to have formidable voodoo magic, and is a very powerful caster with access to the Viewer of Shadows, Death, and the specialist of the Amazons, Serpent. More feared than respected by our fellow Amazons, she is also known as a Curse Witch of Butte Stumps. As you can see, her combat is not shockingly bad for a caster, but against any decent melee Yord or even some heroes she will suffer. But she does have numerous items which can help her in close combat, which we'll get to later. However, Yaxwana is a very powerful caster with access to, as mentioned, Shadows and Death. And there's also this new Yore of Serpents, so we might as well check that out now. First up is Singing Wind, the classic wind spell, reasonably cheap, and the usual expanding tier attack spell. Serpent Strength is a great spell, making a number of units unbreakable for 20 seconds, and increases damage and a small bit of vigour. Great for shoring up a flank and stopping them running, as you bring more units into support. The next spell, adding melee defense and missile resistance, which it speaks for itself, as melee defense is not a strong suit of the Amazons. The Even Jungle spawns a load of units of fell cold ones. I do have a summon spell, and a cavalry summon spell is very rare, and it's not bad for the magic as well. Only 3 uses, as is normal, but still a very powerful spell. Siren's Dream now drops melee attack, defense and leadership in a 32 meter area. Very handy spell to debuff allowing you to weaken the front line of defence and push through. Or if you're using that particular fight, you can slow down their damage and hopefully hold for a few more seconds. The archery embraces Serpent, your standard direct damage. Always useful against a Yord or hero or that tough monster. Part of this Yord is Spirit Walk, boosting speed or casting a spell. Handy as keeping on the move for a mage is always useful, especially as this particular Yord does not have any mounts whatsoever. Also, she has the Elixir of Life, which I went over previously, and one more ability, Curse of the Witch of the Blue Stomps. It's a constant hex around her, dropping leadership and causing fear. Very handy. Sadly, this does mean she may have to be in the line of fire sometimes to get the most out of this particular ability. 4 items now, as Yakswana has access to a weapon, Blue Nightshade Dagger, which is similar to use as the main Yedri Yordess we've just talked about. Also, have Staff of Retribution, giving her a Vortex spell, as if she doesn't have enough spells already with Shadows and Death. Next we have Amulet of a Toad, and I think we all know where she stole this from, boosting her magic resistance and starting amount. More powerful than you think, as I don't remember seeing many items that give you plus 12 to a starting amount. Lastly, Voodoo Dolls, a pretty cool ability to weaken a Yord or hero, meaning rolling with a couple of powerful heroes means you can add this debuff and makes them much easier and possibly likely that they can take a Yord down, even a powerful one. On to the normal choices now. First up is the Matriarch, and this is the cheapest. A good all-rounder in combat, and slightly better armour, this time with a shield, meaning at least she's got a bit of protection. As you'll see, Amazons don't believe in armour that much, but we do believe in speed. Good charge bonus, and AP values of 230 means she's a very good combatant. Not as good as the named ones, which we've seen before, but still can definitely hold her own. She can also be mounted on a cold one, and interestingly a Carnosaur, which really makes her scary in combat. Abilities, she has Enchanted Skins, Mesmerising Dance and Elixir of Life, which I've already been over, and one more called Savage Fury, and a needed combat boost, especially for 32 seconds. Items, she has previously mentioned Amulet of the Moon and Elixir of Life, and the new Star Sword increases more damage, a nice bit of melee attack boost as well. Last of the choices to lead your armies is a Serpent Priestess, a magic user with access to all the spells I went through with Yakswana from the Serpent Yore. Combat wise, she's akin to Yakswana as being pretty weak. What is interesting though, she can be placed on a Stegodon or an Agent Stegodon, adding a lot more to your army. And also she'd be pretty safe on the Mighty Beast. Well, she'd be a bit harder target to take down. Abilities wise, are ones we've already been over, with Amulet of the Moon, Enchanted Skins and Mesmerising Dance. Also, of course, that Spirit Walk from the Yore Serpents. Items, again she has access to the Amulet, but also a long range magic missile. Pretty handy, as an extra attack like this can always be useful when they're in the back lines. And the Starblade, increasing defense and base damage, but its uselessness is a bit limited, as she's not exactly good in combat in the first place. But it does push her defense over 50, so she might have to last a bit longer against an enemy Yord or hero. Onto the heroes just now, and first one is a Totem Warrior, and a particularly interesting one, but I'll get to that in a second. Her base stats are good, with a ranged attack, which hits hard, 60 AP damage on that, and a base attack is reasonable as well, but only 120 AP in melee. Again, she's fast and has poison, which is always welcome. However, she has low defense, and equally low armour, meaning she's a bit of a grass cannon. Abilities are ones we have been over before, such as Enchanted Skins, but also Healing Herbs, which adds a nice health tick. Also has Amulet of the Moon again, and the Starblade, which is very handy, giving a much needed defensive boost. What is interesting is the mounts they can choose, as these are not mounts in the traditional sense, they are totems, which is a really cool idea. Changing the way the Totem Warrior works into various different ways of fighting. I put them all on screen now, Also, we have the stat changes from the base values as they're shown in green to make it nice and easy when comparing. So as you can see, the Eagle and the Jaguar totems drop the missile attack for more combat values. The Eagle is adding a shield and adding some more armor as well. Also adding an AP value of 208, a great increase. While the Jaguar adds anti-charge bonus of 15 and 245 AP damage. So you can tailor your hero to whatever you need in your army. A particularly cool feature. Also, each totem has some unique abilities or items. Piranha has a replenish ammo option, but uses a weapon choice and gains the Conex shell, adding a map wide buff. Very handy, as map wide buffs are always some of the strongest ones I feel. Jaguar has mesmerizing dance and a new item, Core of the Old Ones, adding more splash damage. While Eagle has Savage Fury and Star Sword, both adding some extra damage which have been over before. Next on the hero list is the Champion, which can be mounted on a cold one. Another solid combat hero with a really high base melee attack, best so far at nearly 50. Shielded and a bit more armour than standard with a nice anti-charge bonus of 15 and some AP of 185. And their ever useful ability, Armour Sundering. All around a really good hero, has the abilities to match, as they reasonably do boost those combat values. With the familiar enchanted skins, Savage Fury and Healing Herbs, where the items include Amulet of the Moon and Core of the Old Ones, which we have just looked at. Making the Champion a good combatant for any of your armies, and a particularly good mage protector. Lastly we have the Priestess, which comes in 3 flavours. This one is the Aura of Serpents, and you can also take the Aura of Beasts and the Aura of Life, giving you a nice range of spellcasters. As you might expect, they are all weaker in combat, and have no new abilities to talk about, as they still have Spirit Work and Healing Herbs, and just the Amulet of the Moon for an item. They can however be mounted on a Stegodon, to make them a bit more useful in the fight. On to the infantry now, and let's start off with the classic standard Amazon Warriors, coming in at 580 points. As you can see, the stat line is weak, and combat wise weaker than even Empire Swordsmen, and the ongoing issue of the armour, but they are very quick at 44, which is even quicker than the Skaven at base level. At 580 they are basic infantry, but they do come with poison, which makes them a bit more interesting than your basic troop choice. As poison as standard on a unit this cheap is quite rare, but you need buffs to get the marks out of them, or hex the opponents again with magic for strengthening your troops or weakening them, because like your armour in this faction is a particular problem. Next we have the alternative version, which is the Warriors with Spears. Naturally pretty similar to the Arch choice, but obviously got an anti-charge bonus of 15 and a bit more AP at 8. Again with poison being useful, and especially useful against the large opponents, as weakening their damage output and slowing them down is always handy. This time they're only 600 points. One tier up are the Eagle Warriors, adding some extra armour, and looking at them I'm not exactly sure where this 40 is, but hey, I just go off the numbers. So moving swiftly on, at 750 points they're a big improvement, and can pump out some damage, but they do lack that poison ability. So a mix of these units, along with the normal standard warriors, means a good front line with mixed ability. They also have 5% physical resistance, so it makes it a bit tougher, and they're immune to psychology as well, making pretty good value at 750. At the same price, I provide another tier up for anti-charge. Jaguar Warriors are better in every possible way than the other basic warriors with spears. Again, without the poison, we're much better in a fight with 18 anti-charge bonus and 18 AP, so we can actually pump out a bit of damage as well to charge units. Mix them with your cheap poison spears, and this is quite a potent combination. They can also vanguard, and you'll notice this in a fair few of the Amazon units, as they can really make some potent ambush mixes, especially because of their speed. Now onto some real hard hitters, much like the Wood Elves Shadow Dancers. This faction has a lot in common with those Forest Dwellers, with the armour but decent punch. 8 anti-infantry and 10 AP means they can do a fair bit of damage, and their quickest unit yet are near 50. Allowing to get around those flanks and add their poison. Then we realize they have a frenzy ability, boosting these stats again. They cause fear, and lastly, they have a one-off ability, Coca, adding more physical resistance, vigour, and unbreakable for 42 seconds. It's a risk to make any unit unbreakable, but in the 8 game it can be very variable, stopping them running away and adding all that damage which they can put out on any particular unit you need. All of this for 800 points, means a really good swallowed unit. It's flimsy, but used correctly, it can really do some serious work on the battlefield. Our first Regiment of Renown, the Jungle Spirits. This unit has never been my particular favourite of the roster, as it is very similar to the Wood Elves one, but it does have some unique abilities. But it does weigh in at the 950 cost. Where you can get a lot more units for that money, they do have some interesting abilities. They're ethereal and have magic damage, but low defense, even though they do have some a bit of armor. They have crumbling and disintegrating mechanic, and they can vanguard, so they can be used to run or lead a nice vanguard force. The really nice thing about them is a 75% physical resistance which they get for being ethereal, which each justifies their cost. So if you're facing a non-magical attack army, this unit can make up for its high cost, and a nice surprise for the enemy. However, if they have any type of magical abilities, this unit will melt in short order, so make sure you build your army correctly for the foe you're facing. An upgrade on a previous unit now. The Devouts bring that flank damage again, but they also provide a nice magical range attack, but only at short range. But they do have 18 AP. In melee, they don't hit as hard as the other units, but they do are slightly better in combat stats. But we have 20 S models. Great unit to add a bit more variation to Vanguard options. You may recall this unit, and if you've been on my channel, you may remember my coverage of the Southern Wales mod, as this unit was there as well. This Regiment of Renown works slightly different here. At 1000 points you get a really good spear unit, decent melee and defense, and the armor sundering ability, which is always useful. Then you get that anti-charge of 20 and AP of 28. They also have expert charge defense, means they're very flexible. You can either use them in the centre of your front ranks, or on your left or right to cover against cavalry, or like I like to use them as a counter-charging unit. Leave it roaming in your back lines, ready to pounce on any attacks that come in from the flanks. They also have enchanted skins, add a bit more resistance to the unit. They still have that usual story of lasting power, but in a fight they are very, very flexible. Another Regiment of Renown, this time for the Jaguar Warriors, again at that 1000 point cost. Another handy unit to have, quicker but less damage than the Anaconda's Amazons. This unit provides magic attacks with 21 AP and 18 anti-charge, so just slightly not as potent. Still are very quick and can vanguard as well, meaning it's a very good unit to lead another vanguard charge. They also have expert charge defense, so you can always use them as a deterrent from charging against any archers you've vanguarded, or of course you can use it in the main army. They also have the Amulet of the Moon to boost their resistances as well. They are sort of 1000 point units now, and this is another Regiment of Renown, and a bit more of the middle of the previous two. They have useful abilities, which makes them more defensive, but the base stats are solid, and a shield with armor sundering again with good AP of 23, means they're useful second rank, for either show up or to help with some damage. If they do need to protect themselves, they can use the Starblade ability to increase their defense and physical resistance, making them decently tough for an Amazon unit. Onto the 1200 points now for the Berserkers, and one of the most potent combat units for melee. High attack values boosted by frenzy, so then a natural boost damage as well. which are already good, and the anti-infantry bonus, which is at the AP at only 15. But again, that's boosted from Frenzy, but only slightly, by 15%. The obvious issue is the Rampage. That can cause them to be dragged out of the fight and picked off from a decent charge. Keep them safe though, and they will cut through your tier units, and if you can add a unit that armor sunders the opposition, they can really do some nice damage. Totem Guardians now come with 2 weapon choices, both at 1200 points. The sword version is a good all-rounder against infantry and boosting courage and some extra armor over other units in the CS. With AP of 19 and a bonus infantry of 10. They are a reasonably tough unit, and are the Hero and Yord Guardians, as both weapon choices protect the Queen, giving a nice leadership and defense to any of these characters, so pick the one that best suits you. The Spear version is similar in stats, but the damage is slightly different. Obviously they bring that anti-charge of 20 and a nice AP of 26. Means you can run this with any hero or Jaguar Warriors you think would be most useful for them. Another regiment of renown, this time for the Coca claim Devouts. This unit is very interesting as the damage is quite spectacular when it uses its ranged ability. 50 models in this unit, so one of the smallest we've looked at, but has poison and infantry of 4 and the AP of 7, but they can work if needed in a fight. The ranged attack with fire and magical has to be seen as it's similar to the High Elf Sisters, with a lot of damage but only have 12 shots. With Frenzy and the Coca ability as well, with that handy Vanguard option, means that the base version does tons of flexibility but is expensive at 1400 points. The last of the infantry now, and the 1450 point unit of Regiment of Renown Totem Guardians. With boosted melee stats and only 3 bonus infantry and 16 AP values, means it is not exactly what a must pick for any army, but their ability, the Elixir of Life, is very good, bringing fresh vigour to any place you want and covers 3 units at once, a particularly useful mechanic. Naturally, best used when you're fighting armies which are going to be young and grindy, maybe such as the Undead or the Isman themselves. As mentioned before, there are similarities between these and the Wood Elves. While the range is not as potent, they do have similar units. First up, we have a Scout, cheap at only 480 and a decent Vanguard unit, as this faction provides so many different choices for those particular type of armies. Again, this unit provides cheap access to poisons, which is always handy. The only non-Vanguard missile units in the roster are Tribeswomen, coming at 550 points. Again, they bring the poison to all of their attacks, while Scouts only have them unranged. A useful force to supplement your main battle group, and some anti-charge ability as well, if they get attacked by cavalry or monsters. With 14 anti-charge, but only 5 IP damage on their melee. Other than that, it is slightly better than Scouts in most respects. This unit can fire while moving, making them very handy, but they lack the range of the Wood Elves. Again, anti-charge on their melee, which as you can see, is pretty rare on missile units in general, as they are particularly favourite for cavalry to charge. However, they are still weak in combat, but can at least fight back with 16 bonus versus charge and 12 AP, applying that poison. Their ranged attack also has anti-charge as well, but only 3, and no AP values. A handy unit to have, especially if you come across the Isman, to help bring down their monsters and dinosaurs. They can also use their shout to boost everyone's speed and charge and vigour, a very handy ability, especially because it's map wide. Having one of these units in any of your armies is always a good idea, just for that one ability, as it's such rare to have a map wide buff on one unit. For Jungle Stalkers, have a bit more range. This unit can fire on the move, but can also stalk, providing an extra stealthy Vanguard army. With extra stats on all their abilities, but you do have to pay for that stalk ability, and that range increase, as these are at 800 points. Strangely, for the Amazons, there is very few actual stalk ability units, and this might even be the only one. So you have to rely on the cover, such as forests, to get the jump on your position. The arse of the missile units is at 850. The Huntress are very flexible with Vanguard and fire whilst moving. Poison, melee with anti-charge of 16 and exactly half AP damage. And 2 anti-infantry on all range shots. And they have a lot of ammo, means this unit is effective wherever it is and can fight wherever it needs to be with that melee stats. We're not great, but we're not terrible either. But each gives you an option to help finish any large threats off. And having that extra bonus for his infantry on the missiles is never a bad thing. Onto cavalry options now, and the first unit is the same as the Isman, the Feral Cold ones, so I don't think I'll bother covering it, as you already know that unit. The first new unit, however, is next up, and well, it's birds. You can't fly. I suppose think of them as ostriches, and these ladies have balance sitting like that. Anyway, a cheap cavalry force at 600 points. While they're not a potent attack, they do provide fear and are pretty quick at 85. And with that anti-charge bonus, they can easily do something against other cavalry forces or the odd monster. Or you can just use them to run them down the enemy. However, they do have a small unit size than the standard cavalry, so be aware of that, and the anti-charge is only 12. But at this cost, it's a pretty decent unit. Next up is the same unit, but this time with bows, and there's some nice fast skirmishing possibilities. With that natural ability to Vanguard and to apply their poison. With some AP damage as well at 10, with only a minor anti-infantry bonus at 2. Again, they have that anti-charge bonus on their melee attacks, so it makes it another flexible unit. Obviously not as good as in combat as the previous unit. They're still decent, and a very handy support unit for anywhere on the battlefield. Coming in at 675 points. Another ranged attack cavalry force now. Similar to the Arst, but this time with anti-infantry bonus, which are both on melee and ranged. The melee has 6 and a really good AP at 22, while 11 on the range, AP and bonus to infantry of 2. This unit I prefer with 2S models, as they are great at taking down missile lines quick and easy, and any yield tier chaff, as well as shooting in from range if need be to help weaken any enemy. Slightly more expensive at 700, but I'll take this unit over the Arst 2. The Dark Elves are not the only ones with these beasts, and they work in a similar way. Great AP values, and at 820 points, they actually do have a unit with armour on, like Young Arst. They also support a shield, but they are a bit slower than the average unit. But they can actually last at a prolonged fight, and that 30 AP really helps this unit. However, the defense is low, so Cycle Charge is the order of the day. But as you can see, the charge bonus is not great. A decent cheap unit, but nothing special. Onto the classic prehistoric beast, and some decent damage as well, from this 900 point regiment of renown, with 33 AP and a nice bonus to infantry of 10. A quick unit with decent stats, for damage but not in melee attack or defence. The Amazons don't really run a good cav force, but we do have some tricks later in the roster. Back to the Tigers, who are good at running down missile units as any other type unit is. However, for 900 points it's quite expensive, and there is a different option further down the list. Keep them away from anti-charge threats, as this unit will probably melt to them. But when they're in combat they do have a nice regen, which is particularly useful when they're nomming all the way through missile units. Another unit of cold ones now at 980 points, so more expensive than the previous one, but we work in a similar way. We do have a nice anti-charge bonus of 10 and AP of 33, so they can do damage, but again they're low melee stats. So unless you buff or debuff units, they will struggle against other ones, especially any elite cav would tear them up, with that particularly low model count. A flying option now. I'm on the share of the Isman. This has a decent charge, and huge damage, but only at 10 models. They are great artillery killers and definitely what they should be used for. Quick charges are the order of the day, and with frenzy they have significant damage, with 98 AP and 10 bonus versus infantry base damage. A highly useful unit for helping out wherever it is needed, but a very ill defense and weak armour, so keep away from pretty much everything. Especially if they see a unit closing in, just run, using out a huge speed. The last of the cavalry choices is this Code 1 Regiment of Renown, the Storm Riders at 1250 points. This unit possesses the most punch of any of your cavalry force. Sadly, it's a one-off unit and it's expensive. Has magical attacks, 30 AP with anti-arge of 14, means it has a chance against other elite cavalry, but we definitely would need support. They can put a lot of damage down, so make sure it's used particularly as a counter-charge unit to get the most out of it. Onto the monsters and beasts now, and only 2 units to talk about, as the Amazons have access to the Feral Stegodon, Feral Stegodon and the Feral Carnosaur, and these following monster options. The Austrian Wild Cats at 550 are the same as any Hound unit in Total War Warhammer, fast and can cover a lot of ground, and of course are great at chasing mounted units. As your cavalry are pretty fast, this is just a nice alternative. And they're not too bad. They do have an infantry bonus of 6 and some good AP at 22. Whether you use these instead of your other cavalry options is up to you, and I tend to use this particular unit as I'm quite a big fan of this way of using them. The Warhounds in any faction are usually pretty solid units. And now on to the Ancient Stegodon. While this is similar to the Isman version, I just wanted to mention them as the Amazons look awesome on top of one. Also, they do provide a lot more damage than the Isman version. The shots shown here are all in groups of 8, but there's only limited ammo. So just be aware that you really need to point it at the right target. So I would disable fire at will, and then when you're ready, charge this in and then select the target to put all shots into. And of course, when you've run out of those shots, you're still not mounted on a rather large monster, so it's all good. Onto the R section now. And first up, we have the 600 points of the Totem Riders, again similar to the familiar Isman unit. However, this has an increased range, as the Isman version only have 90. And this one is a bit smaller on damage. Other than that, it's a good ranged cavalry option, but you do have missile units on the ground, so it's a useful choice, but nowhere near essential. Personally, this unit can provide quite a good mix of a decent charge and extra missile abilities. These Viper Birds are pretty much this faction version of the Eagle Riders, but they only have the option for this Regiment of Renown. And it has really good stats across the board. They are 1200 points, but they're again flexible, as seen with the other units in this faction. AP of 80 on their melee attacks, with 10 bonus to infantry, while the range is 20, with anti-infantry of 4, meaning damage will come from all areas. And they can fire while moving, making a real nice choice in the hot situations. And they're lightning fast. In a roster which has flexible units, this might be the most flexible unit of them all. It's a shame it's just a one-off. The Stegodon is similar to all the other Stegodons in the game, but this one has mounted a soul engine on its back. That mighty and particularly nasty beam weapon with the blind ability. This is the same as the Stegodon version for the Isman, but the Amazons have decided to pop it on the back of a Stegodon for extra cool. And of course, the very high combat stats provided by this beastie. And that is your list. Thanks for sitting through that video. And in the next one, we'll be looking at the campaign itself and see what Shaky Withers has for us with his Yost Factions mod. And I hope to see you there.